John Harris, at 45, was a well-known name in the business world of San Francisco, California. His company, Harris Innovations, was at its peak, and he embodied success itself. But like many tales of great triumphs, John's had its shadows. It was a hot summer afternoon, and John was sitting in his luxurious office overlooking San Francisco Bay. He had just closed a major deal and decided to celebrate with a glass of whiskey. The first sip slid smoothly down his throat, bringing a wave of euphoria he craved more and more. "You deserve it, John," he told himself, raising his glass to the reflection in the bar's mirror. Another big deal closed. As the day turned into night, the one glass of whiskey multiplied into several. John was alone in his office, reviewing contracts with bleary eyes, unaware of how much alcohol he was consuming. The next morning, Sarah, his personal assistant, entered the office with a worried expression. "John, is everything okay?" she asked, noting the messy desk and empty bottles. "Of course, Sarah," John replied, trying to mask his hangover with a forced smile. "Just a night of celebration." Sarah sighed, but said nothing more. She knew John was starting to drink too much, but she wasn't sure how to address it without risking her job. Days turned into weeks, and drinking became a constant companion for John. The stress of business and the pressures of success were weighing on him, and alcohol seemed to be the only escape. The side effects began to show up not only in his professional life but also in his personal life. During a dinner with his wife, Linda, at their favorite restaurant, John couldn't take his eyes off his wine glass. "John, are you here with me?" Linda asked, her voice filled with concern. "Yes, of course, dear," he replied, but his vacant stare told a different story. "I feel like I'm losing you," she said, her words heavy with sadness. "Alcohol is becoming more important than our family." "Don't be dramatic, Linda," John snapped, impatient. "I'm just going through a rough patch at work." But this rough patch didn't pass, and John continued to sink into alcohol. The company began to suffer, and investors grew restless. Important meetings were neglected, and crucial decisions were delayed. John's reputation started to crumble along with his company. One night, after yet another failed meeting, John found himself alone in the office again. Looking around, he realized how far he had fallen. With a bottle of whiskey in hand, he muttered to himself, "What am I doing with my life?" But the answer didn't come easily, and John continued his downward spiral, not realizing he was on the brink of losing everything he had built. John Harris, once a respected name in the business world, saw his life collapse rapidly. The alcoholism that began as an occasional escape turned into a heavy chain dragging him to the bottom. It was a cold morning in San Francisco. John was late for a crucial meeting with the investors of Harris Innovations. Sarah, his assistant, rushed into his office. "John, they're waiting for you," she said, trying to hide the concern in her voice. John, with red eyes and a disoriented expression, mumbled, "I'm coming, Sarah. Just give me a minute." When he finally walked into the conference room, the critical stares of the investors pierced his confidence. Mark Thompson, one of the main investors, could no longer contain his frustration. "John, this is becoming unacceptable," Mark said, his voice firm. "We've invested millions in your company, but your lack of commitment is hurting us." John tried to compose himself, but his words came out haltingly. I know, Mark. I'm just going through a tough time." "Tough time?" Mark retorted, incredulous. "You're destroying everything you've built. We need a leader who is present and focused." Mark's words echoed in John's mind. He knew he was letting everyone down, but the power of addiction was stronger than his will to fight it. The following weeks were even worse. John began missing more important meetings, and when he did show up, he was always disheveled and unfocused. His team started to lose trust in him, and rumors of a possible bankruptcy began to circulate. One night, Linda found John collapsed on the living room couch, an empty bottle beside him. Tears filled her eyes as she knelt beside him. "John, you need help," Linda pleaded, her voice trembling. "We're losing you." John looked at her, his eyes filled with despair. I don't know how to stop, Linda. I feel like I'm in a never-ending pit. You have to try, Linda insisted. Think about our family, everything you've built. We can't lose you. Despite Linda's and his friends' efforts, John continued to spiral downward. He started selling personal belongings to fund his addiction, and the company eventually declared bankruptcy. The luxurious house, the expensive cars, everything was gone in the blink of an eye. One day, John found himself in a courtroom, facing the reality of his actions. The judge, with a stern look, pronounced the sentence that took away what was left of his former life. Mr. Harris, your bankruptcy is declared. You have 30 days to vacate your residence. John left the courtroom feeling emptier than ever. He wandered the streets of San Francisco, directionless, hopeless. As days turned into weeks, he found himself increasingly immersed in life as a homeless person. That night, huddled under an awning to shield himself from the cold, John reflected on how everything had changed. He had lost everything, his family, his home, his business. All because of alcoholism. With tears streaming down his dirty face, John whispered to himself, "What have I done with my life?" But this was only half of his journey. He didn't yet know that even in the darkest circumstances, a spark of hope awaited to rekindle his life. San Francisco, a vibrant and lively city, was also a place where shadows of inequality lurked. John Harris, once one of the city's most promising businessmen, now roamed those shadows, learning to survive on the streets. He woke early on that cold morning, lying under an awning near Union Square. With a deep sigh, he sat up, feeling his body ache. He still vaguely remembered the comfort of his old mattress, a memory that now seemed to belong to another life. At least it's not raining today, John murmured to himself, trying to find solace in the small things. As he walked through the city, John passed people who avoided his gaze, hurrying to their destinations. Some children pointed at him, and parents quickly pulled them away, murmuring something about not looking. He was beginning to accept that, to many, he was invisible. In line for a free soup, John met Sam, a street veteran who had taken him under his wing from the start. "How's it going, John?" Sam asked, offering a sincere smile. "Same as always, Sam." "One day at a time," John replied, taking his bowl of soup. "You look better today," Sam commented, trying to lift his friend's spirits. "Maybe we'll find something useful in the recyclables today." "Let's see," John said, lacking much conviction. After the meal, John and Sam walked to the alleys where they often found cans and bottles to sell. The daily routine, though tough, gave John a sense of purpose, even if minimal. While rummaging through trash bins, John came across an old newspaper with a picture of his former company on the front page. He picked up the newspaper and, with a lump in his throat, began reading about how Harris Innovations had been bought by another company. The article mentioned the impact the company's bankruptcy had on many employees. "I've ruined so many lives," John thought, feeling the weight of guilt. "How did I let it get to this point?" Sam, noticing John's expression, put a hand on his shoulder. "You're not alone, you know. We all have our demons." "I just wanted a second chance," John said, looking up at the sky. "I wish I could fix everything." That night, back in his spot under the awning, John hugged himself to keep warm, praying silently. "God, if there's still hope for me, please show me the way." As tears streamed down John's dirty face, he fell asleep, wishing for an opportunity to redeem himself. Little did he know that fate had a plan for him, a path of redemption that would soon unfold in the most unexpected ways. It was a cold, rainy night in San Francisco. John Harris sat under an awning, shivering and hungry. The heavy rain pounded the sidewalks, creating puddles that reflected the city lights. John huddled, trying to warm himself, feeling more alone than ever. "I just wanted a second chance," John murmured to himself, looking up at the dark sky. "Please, God, help me." As John sat there, lost in his thoughts and silent prayers, a family was walking down the street. Michael Smith, his wife Karen, and their teenage son Alex were coming back from a family dinner. They noticed John, huddled and shivering, and Michael stopped abruptly. Wait, Karen, Michael said, holding his wife's arm. I think we need to do something. Karen looked at John with compassion. Are you sure, Michael? He looks really bad. Yes, I am, Michael replied firmly. He approached John and crouched down beside him. Hi, my name is Michael. Are you okay? John looked up, surprised to see someone talking to him. I'm just trying to survive, he replied, his voice weak and hoarse. Why don't you come with us? Michael suggested. We can take you to a warm place and get you something to eat. John hesitated for a moment, but the hunger and cold were too much to bear. I appreciate it so much, he said, struggling to stand. Michael and Alex helped John to his feet, and the family took him to a nearby mall. They bought him new clothes and went to the food court, where John could choose what he wanted to eat. As they sat down to eat, John began to feel a spark of hope for the first time in a long while. He looked at Michael and said, I don't know how to thank you. I was really at my limit. You don't need to thank us, John, Karen said with a warm smile. Everyone deserves a second chance. As they ate, Michael began to talk to John about his past. So, John, what did you do before all of this? John hesitated before answering but felt he could trust this family. I was a businessman. I had my own company, Harris Innovations. Michael's eyes widened in surprise. Harris Innovations? I know that company. I always admired the work you did. My dream was to work there one day. John was taken aback. Really? That means a lot to me to hear that now. It's true, Michael said. And knowing that you helped so many people makes me want to help you now. Michael's empathy and determination deeply touched John. He began to believe that perhaps there was still a chance to rebuild his life. If there's anything we can do to help, please let us know, said Alex, who had been silent until then but was clearly moved by John's story. John looked at each of them, feeling a mix of gratitude and emotion. I just want a chance to start over, he said, with tears in his eyes. I promise I won't waste it. Michael firmly grasped John's shoulder. We'll help you find that chance, John. Together, we'll help you get back on your feet. That night, as the family took him to a temporary shelter, John felt that his prayers had been answered. He didn't know how yet, but he was determined to seize this new opportunity with all his might. The next morning, John woke up at the shelter where the Smith family had taken him. For the first time in a long while, he felt clean, dressed in new clothes, and with a renewed sense of hope. He got up and went to the cafeteria, where he found Michael, Karen, and Alex waiting for him. Good morning, John, Karen said with a warm smile. How are you feeling today? Better than I have in a long time, John replied, feeling genuinely grateful. I don't know how to thank all of you. Don't worry about that right now, Michael said, waving his hand. What's important is that you're here, and we'll figure out the next steps together. After breakfast, the family took John back to the mall, this time to buy some essential items he would need to start over. As they walked through the mall, Michael began to talk more about John's plans for the future. John, you mentioned yesterday that you had a company, Michael said. Do you have any idea how you'd like to restart your life? John sighed, thoughtful. I'd love to get back into business, but I know it's going to be tough. Maybe a job to start with, and then see where that leads. You know, John, Alex interjected, my dad always talked about how he wanted to work at Harris Innovations. Maybe we could use some of his old contacts to help you find a job. John looked at Alex, surprised and touched by the idea. That would be amazing. I'm not sure if I still have any contacts who can help, but I'm willing to try. Michael nodded. We'll do that. I know some people in the industry who might give you a chance. And in the meantime, we can help you find a stable place to stay and get you into a rehabilitation program. John felt a wave of gratitude and emotion. I promise I won't waste this opportunity. I'll do everything I can to get back on my feet. After a few hours at the mall, the family took John to an interview at a charity organization that offered rehabilitation and job reintegration programs. The director, Susan, greeted them with a warm smile. "Welcome, John," Susan said, shaking his hand. "Michael told me a bit about your situation, and we're here to help." "Thank you, Susan," John said, feeling hopeful. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes to turn my life around." Susan explained the rehabilitation program and the steps John would need to take to re-enter the workforce. She also mentioned that the organization had partnerships with various companies willing to give a second chance to people in recovery. "We'll start with rehabilitation," Susan said. "After that, we'll work on your reintegration into the job market. I know it's going to be a challenge, but we believe in you, John." As they left Susan's office, John felt incredibly grateful for the help he was receiving. He looked at Michael, Karen, and Alex, feeling a deep connection to this family who had come into his life at its darkest moment. "You saved my life," John said, tears in his eyes. "I'll never forget what you're doing for me." Michael smiled and placed a hand on John's shoulder. "We're just doing what's right, John. Now, let's work together to help you get back on your feet." With this new hope and the unwavering support of the Smith family, John felt that he finally had a chance to rebuild his life. And he was determined to make the most of every opportunity given to him. John was determined to do whatever it took to change his life. He had started the rehabilitation program, and each day was a new challenge but also a new opportunity to begin again. On the first day of the program, John was introduced to a support group made up of people going through similar situations. The group facilitator, David, was a middle-aged man with a warm and understanding demeanor. "Welcome, John," David said, shaking his hand. "We're all at different stages of recovery here, but the most important thing is that we're on this journey together." John nodded, feeling nervous but determined. He sat in a circle of chairs with the other participants and listened as each person shared their stories. When it was John's turn, he took a deep breath and began. "My name is John, and I was a successful businessman. But alcoholism ruined my life. I lost my company, my family, and everything I had. I'm here because I want a second chance." The group members welcomed him with words of encouragement and understanding. It was an emotional moment for John, who felt less alone as he heard the stories of others. After the meeting, David approached John. "You did well sharing your story. The first step in recovery is acknowledging the problem and seeking help." "Thank you, David," John said. "I'm ready to work hard and turn my life around." In the following days, John threw himself into the rehabilitation program. He attended therapy sessions, group activities, and life skills workshops. Each day brought new challenges, but also new victories. One afternoon, during an individual therapy session with David, John reflected on his progress. "I feel like I'm starting to find myself again," he said. "But it's still hard dealing with the guilt and shame from the past." "That's normal, John," David said. "Recovery is a process, and part of that is forgiving yourself. The important thing is that you're moving in the right direction." Meanwhile, the Smith family continued to support John. They visited him regularly, offering words of encouragement and staying in touch with job reintegration programs. Michael was particularly dedicated to helping John find job opportunities. One day, during one of these visits, Michael brought good news. "John, I spoke with an old colleague who works at a tech company. They're willing to give you a chance for an interview." John felt a wave of excitement. "Really? That's amazing, Michael. Thank you for believing in me." "You deserve this chance," Michael said. "I know you'll do great." With the support of the Smith family and the renewed strength he found in rehabilitation, John began preparing for the interview. He worked hard, reviewing his skills and experience, and began to feel a confidence that had long been lost. The night before the interview, John was nervous but hopeful. He looked out the window of the shelter and whispered a silent prayer of gratitude and hope. "Thank you, God, for this new chance. I promise to do my best." The next day, John woke up early, dressed in the clothes the Smith family had given him, and headed to the interview. As he walked to the office, he felt a mix of nervousness and determination. He knew this was his chance to prove to himself and others that he could change. Entering the interview room, John was greeted by Rachel, the human resources manager. "Welcome, John," she said with a smile. "We're excited to hear more about you and how you can contribute to our team." John smiled, feeling ready. "Thank you, Rachel. I'm eager to share my story and show how I can be a valuable asset to your company." The interview began, and John felt that he was finally on the right path to rebuilding his life, one step at a time. John entered the interview room feeling the weight of the moment. It was his first major opportunity since starting his recovery journey. The HR manager, Rachel, was a woman in her early 30s with a welcoming and professional demeanor. "Welcome, John," Rachel said, extending her hand to shake his. "Please, have a seat." "Thank you, Rachel," John replied, feeling a mix of nervousness and determination as he shook her hand. Rachel started the interview by reviewing John's resume. "I see you have extensive experience as a businessman. Could you tell me a bit about Harris Innovations and your role there?" John took a deep breath and began. "I founded Harris Innovations over 10 years ago. We started as a small startup focused on technology and innovation, and we grew quickly to become one of the leading companies in the industry. My role was to lead the company, from strategic management to overseeing major projects." Rachel took notes as John spoke. "And what would you say were your biggest achievements at Harris Innovations?" "We developed several pioneering technologies that revolutionized the market," John said, pride evident in his voice. "We also created a corporate culture that valued innovation and employee well-being." Rachel smiled. "That's impressive, John. And what motivated you to seek a new opportunity now?" John hesitated for a moment but decided to be honest. "I went through a very tough time in my life. Alcoholism caused me to lose everything I had built, including my company and my family. But I'm in recovery now, and I want a second chance to rebuild my life and contribute positively to a new team." Rachel looked at John with a compassionate expression. "Thank you for your honesty, John. Here, we value transparency and believe in second chances. I'll be upfront, we're looking for someone with your experience and passion. I believe you could bring a valuable perspective to our team." John felt a wave of relief and hope. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove my worth. I just need an opportunity." Rachel nodded. "I understand. Here's what we'll do, I'd like to offer you a 3-month provisional position. This will give us a chance to see how you adapt and contribute to our team. If all goes well, we can discuss a permanent position." John could hardly contain his emotion. "This is more than I could ask for. Thank you so much, Rachel. I won't let you down." "I'm sure you won't," Rachel said with an encouraging smile. "We'll take care of the administrative details, and you can start next Monday." Leaving the interview room, John felt a sense of accomplishment and hope he hadn't experienced in a long time. He immediately called Michael. "Michael, I got the provisional position!" John exclaimed, barely containing his excitement. "I knew you'd make it." Michael replied, equally thrilled. "This is just the beginning, John. We're all cheering for you." John spent the weekend preparing for his first day at work. He reviewed old projects, read up on the latest industry trends, and even bought a new notebook for notes. When Monday arrived, he was ready. Upon arriving at the office, he was greeted by Rachel and introduced to the team. Everyone was welcoming, and John felt he was exactly where he needed to be. Over the next 3 months, John worked diligently, proving his worth and earning his colleagues' trust. He applied his extensive experience to important projects, brought new ideas, and helped improve processes. His efforts did not go unnoticed. At the end of the provisional period, Rachel called him in for a meeting. "John, your dedication and hard work have been remarkable. We're impressed with what you've brought to our team. We'd like to offer you a permanent position." John felt a deep sense of relief. "This means the world to me, Rachel. I appreciate the trust and the opportunity." Rachel smiled. "You deserve it, John. Welcome officially to the team." With a permanent position secured and the continued support of the Smith family, John felt he was finally on the right path to rebuild his life and make a difference. With his new career underway, John began to feel a renewed confidence and sense of purpose. He knew this was a precious opportunity and was determined not to waste it. His hard work and dedication continued to impress his colleagues, and he quickly became an integral part of the team. One afternoon, while working on an important project, Rachel called John into her office. "John, I'd like to discuss a new initiative with you," Rachel said with a smile. "We're thinking of launching a mentorship program for new employees, and I believe you would be perfect to lead it." John was surprised and honored. "Me? Lead a mentorship program?" "Yes," Rachel replied. "Your experience and journey of overcoming challenges are inspiring. We believe you can offer valuable support to new employees and help them integrate into the company." John thought for a moment and smiled. "I'd love to do that. I believe everyone deserves a chance to grow and learn." "Great," Rachel said. "Let's start planning the details in the coming weeks." As the mentorship program was being developed, John dedicated himself to getting to know the new employees better and understanding their needs. He wanted to create a supportive and welcoming environment, something he had found thanks to the Smith family and the company. In a meeting with some of the new hires, John began to share his story. "I know some of you might be facing personal and professional challenges," John started. "I want you to know that, no matter where you are right now, there's always a chance to start over." One of the new hires, Lisa, raised her hand timidly. "John, how did you overcome everything you went through?" John smiled. "It was a tough road, Lisa, but not impossible. The support from those around me was crucial. And above all, believing that I could change my situation." As the mentorship program took shape, John noticed a positive transformation within the company. The new employees felt more integrated and motivated, which reflected in productivity and the work environment. During a conversation with Michael, John shared his enthusiasm. "Michael, the mentorship program is really making a difference. I feel like I'm contributing in a meaningful way." "I knew you'd do a great job," Michael said with pride. "You're inspiring everyone around you, John." One day, while walking through the city, John decided to visit an old colleague, Robert, who had worked with him at Harris Innovations. Robert now ran a small startup and was surprised to see John. "John! It's been a long time," Robert exclaimed. "How are you doing?" John told Robert about his journey of recovery and his new job. Robert listened attentively, impressed by John's resilience. "That's amazing, John," Robert said. "I'm so happy for you. You've always had a special talent for leading and inspiring others." "Thank you, Robert," John replied. "I've learned a lot from my past mistakes, and I'm determined to do better this time." As they talked, Robert mentioned a project his startup was working on and asked if John would be interested in collaborating as a consultant. "It would be an honor," John responded. "I'm always open to new opportunities and ways to contribute." In the following months, John balanced his work at the company with consulting for Robert's startup. He felt that he was finally rebuilding his life in a meaningful and impactful way. One evening, while having dinner with the Smith family, John expressed his gratitude. "You've changed my life," John said, his voice filled with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for me." "You did most of the work yourself, John," Karen said. "We're proud of you." "That's right," Alex added. "You're an example of how it's never too late to start over." John smiled, feeling a deep connection with the family who had rescued him in his darkest hour. He knew that, with his hard work and the ongoing support from those around him, he was on the right path to a bright and promising future. John felt increasingly confident and fulfilled with his progress. The mentorship program was thriving, and he was making significant contributions both at the company and at Robert's startup. However, despite his recent success, he knew there were still parts of his past that needed to be resolved. One morning, while reviewing some documents at the office, John received an unexpected call. Upon answering, he heard a familiar voice. "John? It's me, Sarah." Sarah was John's ex-wife, with whom he hadn't been in contact for years. John's heart raced. "Sarah? Is it really you?" "Yes," she replied, her voice soft and hesitant. "I heard you're working here in the city, and I wanted to see if we could meet. There's something I need to discuss with you." John was silent for a moment, trying to process the surprise. "Sure, Sarah. Can we meet this afternoon?" "Yes, that sounds good. Let's meet at the cafe near your office at 3 p.m. "Okay," John said, trying to stay calm. "I'll see you there." The afternoon seemed to drag until 3 p.m. When the time finally came, John went to the cafe, feeling nervous and anxious. As he walked in, he saw Sarah sitting at a table by the window. She looked exactly as he remembered, but with an air of sadness and fatigue. "Sarah," John said, approaching her. "Thank you for coming." "John," she responded, standing up to give him a brief hug. "Thank you for meeting me." They sat down, and for a moment, there was an awkward silence. Finally, Sarah began to speak. "John, I know it's been a long time, and there's a lot between us that hasn't been resolved," she said, looking directly at him. "I heard about your recovery and wanted to say that I'm happy for you." "Thank you, Sarah," John said, feeling emotional. I'm really sorry for everything that happened. I know I caused a lot of pain." "It was a tough time for all of us," Sarah said with a sigh. "But I'm not here just to talk about the past. I wanted to tell you about our son, James." John was stunned. "Our son?" "Sarah, I didn't know." "I know," she interrupted, tears in her eyes. "When you left, I discovered I was pregnant. I thought it would be better not to tell you, given your situation at the time. But now, I think it's time for you to meet James." John felt a mix of emotions: joy, surprise, regret. "Sarah, I don't know what to say. I want to meet James. I want to be a part of his life." "He wants to meet you too," Sarah said, wiping away a tear. "He's always asked about you. I told him you were struggling with your own demons, but that you were a good person at heart." "Sarah, I'm going to do everything I can to be a good father to him," John said, feeling determined. "Thank you for giving me this chance." "Let's take it slow, John," Sarah said with a small smile. "James is a teenager now, and he needs time to adjust too." They spent the afternoon talking about the past, the present, and the future. Sarah explained that James was a bright and curious young man who loved technology, a passion he had clearly inherited from his father. At the end of their conversation, Sarah said, "John, let's plan a meeting with James next week. We can do it in a relaxed setting so that he feels comfortable." "That sounds great," John replied with a hopeful smile. "I can't wait to meet him." When John returned to the office, he felt overwhelmed with emotions but also incredibly grateful for the new opportunity to reconnect with his son. He knew there was still much to be done, but he was determined to rebuild the family bonds he had lost. At the end of the day, he shared the news with Michael and Karen. "I have a son, Michael. I'm going to meet him next week," John said, his voice trembling with emotion. "That's wonderful, John," Michael said, giving him a hug. "We're here to support you every step of the way." "Thank you for sharing this with us," Karen said with a warm smile. "We're so happy for you." With the ongoing support from the Smith family and the new perspective of reconnecting with his son, John felt more motivated than ever to continue his journey of recovery and redemption. He knew there would still be many challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them head-on. The following week, John was nervous and anxious about meeting James. His conversation with Sarah had been a relief and a blessing, but he knew gaining his son's trust would be a challenge. He wanted to make sure their first meeting was positive and memorable. Sarah suggested they meet at a quiet park where James could feel at ease and the setting would be relaxing. On Saturday afternoon, John drove to the location, his mind filled with thoughts and expectations. When he arrived, he saw Sarah waiting near a fountain. She wore a gentle smile, but her eyes showed the same anxiety John felt. "Hi, John," Sarah said, hugging him. "I'm glad you could make it." "Hi, Sarah," John replied, trying to stay calm. "I'm ready to meet James." Sarah glanced at her watch. "He should be arriving any moment now. I'll stay here so he doesn't feel pressured." As they waited, John looked around the park, trying to calm his nerves. He was surrounded by families and children playing, which helped create a light atmosphere. Finally, he saw James approaching. He was a tall teenager with a curious look and a posture that showed a mix of confidence and uncertainty. Sarah waved to him, and James walked toward them. "Hi, James," Sarah said with a smile. "This is your dad, John." James looked at John and extended his hand, still a bit hesitant. "Hi, Dad." John shook James's hand firmly, trying to convey reassurance. "Hi, James. It's a pleasure to finally meet you." The three of them sat on a bench near the fountain, and Sarah started a conversation to break the ice. "James, you're into sports, right?" "Yes," James replied with a shy smile. "I play basketball at school." "I used to love basketball when I was younger," John said with a smile. "Maybe we can catch a game together someday." James nodded, seeming interested. "That would be cool." Sarah chimed in, "James, your dad has worked in technology, which is something you're also interested in. Maybe you can talk about that." John looked at James, hopeful. "So, I heard you're into technology. What's your latest project?" James smiled. "I'm working on a robotics project for the school science fair. It's a robot that can interact with its environment and respond to basic commands." "That's amazing," John said, impressed. "I used to work with technology and innovation, and I'd love to hear more about your project." As they talked, John noticed that James was opening up more, sharing details about his project and his passions. John asked questions and offered advice based on his own experience, trying to be the father James needed. "You really know your stuff," James said with a genuine smile. "Maybe I can show you my project when it's ready." "I'd love that," John replied with a proud smile. "I'm looking forward to seeing what you've created." Sarah watched with satisfaction, seeing the growing connection between father and son. She knew their relationship wouldn't be built overnight, but she was seeing the start of a new chapter in their lives. As the afternoon wore on, the trio decided to take a walk around the park. During the stroll, John and James continued to talk about their shared interests, and John made a conscious effort to listen more than talk, respecting James's space and feelings. At the end of the meeting, as they prepared to say goodbye, James said, "Thanks for coming, Dad. It was nice meeting you." "I should be the one to thank, James," John said with a sincere smile. "I hope we can spend more time together." "Yeah, that would be nice," James replied with a shy smile. "Let's plan something for next week," Sarah suggested. "Maybe we could go to a game or do something we all enjoy." "Great," John said, feeling hopeful. "I'm looking forward to it." With a final exchange of smiles and promises of future get-togethers, John said goodbye to James and Sarah. As he drove home, he felt relieved and excited about the progress he had made in reconnecting with his son. He knew there was still much more to do, but he was confident he was on the right path. With the ongoing support from Sarah, the Smith family, and now James, John was beginning to rebuild his life in a meaningful and fulfilling way. Over the following weeks, John continued to grow closer to James and strengthen their relationship. They started meeting regularly, and John made a point of being present for important events in James's life. The bond between father and son was growing, and John felt he was finally mending the ties he had lost. One night, while John was at home, Michael called. "Hi, John. I wanted to invite you to a small celebration we're organizing for the mentoring program, Michael said, his voice filled with enthusiasm. It'll be an opportunity to recognize the progress everyone has made and celebrate the achievements. That sounds great, Michael, John replied. I'd love to attend. I'll bring James and Sarah with me, if that's okay. Of course, it'll be great to have them there. The celebration is on Friday evening at 7 p.m. Perfect. I'll be there, John said with a smile. On Friday, John arrived at the event with James and Sarah. The atmosphere was lively, with co-workers, mentors, and new employees chatting and laughing. Michael and Karen were welcoming guests at the entrance. John, it's great to see you and your family here, Michael said, greeting them. I hope you're enjoying yourselves. We are, John replied. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very proud of the work we've done with the mentoring program. As the evening progressed, John watched James interact with the other participants. James was engaging in conversations and seemed comfortable in the environment, which John saw as a positive sign. When the event was almost over, Michael took the stage to give a speech. I want to thank everyone for their hard work and dedication that have made the mentoring program a success, Michael began. In particular, I'd like to recognize John, whose inspiring story and significant contribution were key to the success of this program. Applause followed, and John felt a warm glow in his heart. He looked at James and Sarah, who were smiling proudly. After the speech, John approached Michael and Karen. Thank you for acknowledging my work. It means a lot to me. You really made a difference, John, Karen said with a smile. We're all very proud of you. As the celebration continued, John found himself talking with other mentoring program participants, sharing his experiences and hearing theirs. James, now more confident, was engaging animatedly with some colleagues. Later, as they were heading home, John turned to James and Sarah in the car. It was an amazing night, John said. James, you did a great job interacting with people. I'm really proud of you. Thanks, Dad, James replied with a smile. I had a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a great opportunity to see the impact of the program, Sarah agreed. And to see how well you're doing. John felt gratified to see his son adapting and engaging. He knew there were still challenges ahead, but the progress he was making in his personal and professional life gave him hope. The following week, John and James were at the park, working together on a robotics project that James was developing for the school science fair. John was impressed with the project and made sure to help wherever he could. This is looking excellent, James, John said as he adjusted a piece of the robot. You really have a talent for this. Thanks, Dad, James replied with a smile. I'm learning a lot from you. The time they spent together working on the project brought a new dimension to their relationship. John began to feel that, despite past difficulties and failures, he was creating new memories and opportunities with James. During a break, James looked at John and asked, Dad, do you think you might get back into working in technology? Like, on a big project or something? John thought for a moment before responding. Actually, I've been thinking about that. Working with technology has always been a big passion of mine. And with everything I've learned and the new opportunities one have now, it might be the right time to consider it. That would be great, James said with enthusiasm. Maybe we can work on some projects together in the future. That sounds fantastic, John agreed, feeling inspired. Let's keep working on these projects and see where they take us. As evening fell and they began cleaning up, John reflected on the progress he had made. He knew there was still a long way to go, but he was grateful for the new connections and opportunities emerging in his life. With renewed confidence and the steady support from James and Sarah, John was determined to continue his journey, rebuilding his life in a way that brought joy and fulfillment to both himself and his family. John's life was finally starting to come together in a positive way. His efforts at the company, his involvement in the mentoring program, and the renewed relationship with James and Sarah gave him a sense of accomplishment he had lost years ago. With James's robotics project approaching the science fair, the family was excited to showcase the work they had done together. On the morning of the science fair event, John, James, and Sarah were at the school, preparing the project for display. The atmosphere was vibrant, with many schools and booths filled with innovative ideas. "We're almost ready," James said, adjusting the final details on the robot. "Just a few more tweaks and we'll be set for the presentation." "It looks amazing, James," John praised. "You did a fantastic job. I'm sure everyone will love it." Sarah was organizing the supporting materials and said, "I'm so proud of both of you. You've worked so hard." The event was in full swing when James and John prepared to give their presentation. James was a bit nervous, but John encouraged him. "You're ready, James. Just talk about what you've done and how the robot works. People will be interested in your passion and your work." James took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage with John by his side. The audience was attentive as James began to explain the project. "Hello, everyone. My name is James, and this is my robot. It's designed to interact with its environment and respond to basic commands. I worked on it with my dad, and we learned a lot during the process." As James spoke, John watched with pride. The robot was working perfectly, performing tasks efficiently and drawing the audience's attention. After the presentation, several visitors approached to ask questions and provide feedback. John noticed the excitement and enthusiasm in James's eyes. "You did an excellent job," John said as James talked with a group of interested visitors. "I'm so happy to see you so confident and engaged." "Thanks, Dad," James replied with a smile. "It was an amazing experience. And having you here to support me means a lot." Later, as they were leaving the fair, Sarah turned to John. "I really feel like we're in a good place now. The project was a success, and your relationship is growing stronger every day." "I feel that way too," John said. "It was a wonderful experience, and I'm looking forward to what the future holds." The following week, John received an unexpected proposal. Michael and Karen invited him to lunch at a local restaurant, where Michael revealed the news. "John, we wanted to talk to you about an opportunity that's come up," Michael started. "We're considering expanding the mentoring program to other cities, and we'd like you to be the coordinator for that project." John was surprised and excited. "That's a big responsibility. What do you expect from me?" "We want you to use your experience and vision to help create and implement the program in new locations," Michael explained. "You've done an excellent job here, and we believe you can make the same difference in other communities." "I'm honored by the offer," John said with a smile. "I'm excited about the idea and ready to take on this new challenge." As they discussed the details, John thought about how his life had changed. The invitation to lead the expansion of the mentoring program was a sign that his dedication was being recognized and rewarded. Later that week, John shared the news with James and Sarah. They were in the living room, relaxing after a busy day. "I have some big news for you," John said with excitement. "I've been asked to coordinate the expansion of the mentoring program to other cities." "That's incredible, Dad!" James exclaimed. "Congratulations!" "Yes, I'm so happy for you," Sarah said, hugging John. "Your dedication and hard work are really paying off." "Thank you," John said with an emotional smile. "I couldn't have done it without your support." As the family celebrated John's new phase in life, he felt optimistic about the future. He knew there was still a lot of work ahead, but he was ready to face it with determination and hope. Looking to the future, John felt he was beginning to build a life that was not only meaningful but also full of opportunities to grow and positively impact the lives of those around him. With James and Sarah by his side, he was ready to face any challenge and make the most of the opportunities that came his way.